So, Boh Ruffin, thank you so much for joining me to kind of talk a little bit about your tenure so far on the school board, which has been the shortest of all of the board
Yeah,
members. You were voted in a special election not even a full year ago. And how's that been so far?
it's been a wonderful learning experience. I'm encouraged by the onboarding process and watching the board in action. Uh, it's a genuine group of citizens, supporting our superintendent who has a clear vision and is working hard to execute it. So it's been a great experience seeing what's behind the scene, and thankfully, there are no surprises other than just many of folks devoted to devoted to the kids in our community.
Yeah, well, and thank you for being one of those folks. Why did you want to run last year and now, of course, running for a full term, this year? What is it about this position that that you're most interested in, or that you feel you can make the biggest difference?
Uh, that's a great question. Again, it may be a really boring answer, but I would say that I'm not a one issue candidate, right? And I was approached by members of the community. They're familiar with my family's dedication to education uh, and again, I didn't have an agenda, right? I'm not on these kind of panic politics that we're seeing today, and I've served on school boards. Well, let me rephrase that. I've served on a school board before when I lived in Taiwan. It was part of the Taipei American school system, and I saw how a really functional school board runs and governs and collaborates with the superintendent. So I thought I could bring that experience to Corning Painted Post, with again just the only driver of not having an agenda, but just only interested in seeing the school run with fair and equitable governance.
Sure, sure. And you mentioned, one topic or one issue candidates. When you ran last year, there were something like 8 to 10, if not more, candidates running for
Hmm.
four open positions. And this year, there are only the three incumbents so far running.
Hmm.
And certainly some of those people who were running last year were one issue candidates, and yeah, they talked about that, and they shared that, and they were open about that. But it seems that a one-issue candidate would, get bored after a while if their issue wasn't on the table at every meeting, or if it was solved early on. And so I want to just talk about that a little bit, maybe from your perspective,
Hmm.
and because I know that you get a lot of um, feedback, you get a lot of chatter, conversations in the community, and they certainly revolve around one topic at a time.
Hmm.
But some people do get fixated and maybe don't realize the broad spectrum of all the work that the board is doing. So, if you wouldn't mind just kind of providing some insight into that, and the idea of one issue candidates or one issue conversations, and whether that's really realistic for the board.
Yeah, yeah. It's um, the the rules for school boards, the state laws for school boards are pretty well laid out. And I'll be the first to admit I don't understand all of them, but the way the state the Department of Education oversees education policy, and law, uh, that's what we're bound by, right? So it's really hard to kind of bubble up one issue. I can't even think of anything. Perhaps let's just make up something like a book burning because of some offensive passage. It's really hard to as a board member, as a single board member, to affect that, right? Because we're our the guardrails for board members is pretty clear. um, and so we're bound by what the state affects for us, right? So we oversee the superintendents. We're there to make sure that her policies are consistent with state law, and um, so again, it's really hard, to create a panic over one issue and affect things, at at this level, right? Yeah, of course, if other board members were in sync, yeah. But again, as a single board member, we're all trying to move forward with making sure that that we're consistent with state laws, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And,
presently, our state doesn't require us to burn books because of offensive passages.
yes, yeah, and I'm glad for that. I think that's important to have them there. I've been to some board meetings. I've been to some school board meetings, and they are a little boring. They're not as exciting as sometimes the media or even
Yeah,
the campaigns and things would lead you to believe. But I also think that maybe that's a good thing.
yeah,
And
exactly.
I wonder what your perspective is on that about school board meetings are, kind of a lot of updates, maybe
Hmm.
celebrating a milestone here or there, taking care of some, just kind of business things.
Hmm.
What is kind of the day to day of a school board member, and why is it good that maybe it's a little boring?
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, because we're following a template that's kind of congruent with state policy and state law. There's standing agendas. There's committee reports. There's issues from maybe special issues that the superintendent might bring up. But again, it's really straightforward, right? There's standing set of committees that report up. There's always some budget issues. Perhaps there's contract negotiations, but it's it's thankfully very boring, right? um, um, you know, but again, we're working toward enabling the superintendent's vision, right? Again, that's still congruent with state law. Um, so yeah, the behind the scenes stuff is again, thankfully boring, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Have you?
well run by I would say that the president of the school board, he's very practiced in the art of parliamentary procedure. The discussions are fair and open. So yeah, I can say that the day to day stuff is just that,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah.
And of course, the big thing that comes around annually is the budget.
Hmm.
And you kind of had your first look, your first go around this past year. And I wonder, I did want to ask just about the budget and when that comes around, because that seems, money talks, and that seems to indicate, what's important for the district, what's important to the board, and filters right on
Hmm.
through. So what was that specific process like for you, and will you take any of what you learned with you into the next term?
Great question. So excuse me, part of my onboarding was state mandated training, right? And among many things were there were finance uh, onboarding sessions that well, hours of training that I had to go through, and then to see it in action, with the superintendent staff. How the budget came together, again, in accordance with the same rules and laws that I learned in these finance and governance training. It was exactly that, right? Uh, and budgets are what they are, right? There's administrative costs, there's building costs, there's capital projects, salaries, um, medical, all these things, kind of get rolled into the budget. And again, there's certainly art and science to putting a budget together, and the superintendent staff did exactly that, right? They followed the rules. obviously we have to account for, price fluctuation, and I think everyone can admit to, and in doing so, you got to have some insight to, like, how these changes in prices, and the cost of living, will impact the budget, right? And again, we saw that put together, and I forget what day's the date. Yeah, in a week or so, we're going to vote on that, to to see how the community responds to the budget as it laid out. Again, accounting for price fluctuations, standard of living increases, in capital projects, and changes in some of our debt structure. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time and giving some, insight into all of the things that go into being a school board member,
Mhm.
and also, the fact that some of them are just mundane,
Yeah.
some of them are kind of boring, but you're certainly, doing a lot for our community, and representing, so many people that interact with the district every single day.
Hmm.
So I appreciate your
Hmm.
service. I appreciate the volunteer time that you're putting in, and you and all of your colleagues and peers
Hmm.
there on the board. So, and thanks for taking the time to talk with me today.
Oh, no worries. And I'm happy to serve, and thank you for your interest, in the school board, and your service to the community, by sharing interviews like this, with your audience. Thank you.